Many people assume if they hit seven figures, they're ready to retire. But one family that we've been working with had $1.85 million by age 58, and they still didn't know if they could afford their goal of $10,000 a month or if that dream would leave them broke in their 70s. They've been working for decades, and they were finally ready for some more freedom. Various online calculators gave them wildly different answers. Their advisor at the big box investment firm wasn't much help, and fear started to replace their excitement about an early retirement. Now, I've helped dozens of clients navigate this exact decision. And so in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how I helped this client get the answers they needed and how to achieve the retirement they're looking for. Let's dive in. Let me introduce you to Greg and Jill. Not their real names, but the data is from a real couple we work with. Greg and Jill built up $1.85 million across their investment accounts. They've been conservative with money, always saving, rarely splurging. But now they really want to retire early and start enjoying life a little more. Things like going out to eat more, exploring their city, spending more time and money on their favorite hobbies, and of course, traveling more. They're thinking that about $10,000 a month or $120,000 a year in spending should let them live the way that they've always wanted to. But like we said, they've run the numbers on several different online calculators. They've spoken with multiple free advisors from different places like their 401k plan, and they keep getting different answers. One says they're fine, nothing to worry about, and the next says that they're going to run out of money in their 70s. Greg works in a very high-stress job as it is, and the stress about potentially running out of money if he were to retire early like he wants to is causing even more. They aren't sure what to do. They feel stuck, and every day they wait is another day they will never get back to enjoy the things that are really most important to them. So now that you know what Greg and Jill are dealing with, trying to make this decision, the next part is really important because it's about exactly what they saw when we walked through their numbers with them and how that process started to finally give them some clarity on their retirement decision. So now that you know what Greg and Jill are dealing with while trying to make this decision, the next part is really important. It's about exactly what they saw when we walked through their numbers with them and how that process started to finally give them some real clarity on their retirement. Starting with some very traditional planning numbers. $1.85 million times 4.5% equals $83,250. Their Social Security at full retirement age for Greg is $42,000 and for Jill is $21,000. That gives them a total of $63,000. And when we add up the conservative withdrawal rate from their investments plus Social Security, their total is $146,250. Some might think, we're done, right? You're good to go. This is where some calculators might be kicking in to say, yeah, you're good to go, no problem. But this is what I call napkin math. And while it can be helpful, it leaves out a few critical things we haven't addressed. And if you don't know how to ask these questions, your plans are going to struggle. First off, taxes. A lot of Greg and Jill's savings are in pre-tax 401ks, and a $120,000 number that we're looking for is an after-tax number. So our withdrawals from our investments, if they're going to mostly be pre-tax, we need to increase that number from, say, 120 to more like 135. So very quickly, the cushion that we thought we had from the napkin math just disappeared. Second, we have a healthcare gap that Greg and Jill forgot to factor into their numbers. At the most, they will have 18 months to see if COBRA from their current employer is more or less expensive than private health insurance. Recently, from working with clients, those numbers seem to be very close. Depending on where you live right now, private health insurance is running around $1,000 to $1,500 per month for a married couple. That's an extra $10,000 to $18,000 per year for 7 years until they hit 65 when Medicare kicks in. So we'll have to add that number to their $10,000 a month goal. Third, Greg and Jill are looking to retire now at age 58. Those Social Security numbers we used above are their full retirement age figures. For those of you that aren't familiar, that means age 67. So if they retire at 58, and maybe they end up taking Social Security at age 62, those numbers are going to come down. This also means that because they don't have Social Security yet, that they're going to have to take a higher than 4.5% withdrawal rate from their investments until whenever Social Security does kick in. So if they were to take $135,000 all from the $1.85 million bucket of money, that's more like a 7.3% withdrawal rate, which traditionally speaking would be considered an aggressive or risky planning withdrawal rate. But we're going to be able to counter that in two ways. One, by bucketing our assets for more conservative accounts to withdraw from now and more aggressive accounts to grow for later, and by using a retirement planning secret called spending guardrails that we'll go over shortly. From breaking this down with them, we now know we have specific planning to do in segments. From 58 to 60, where we actually can't tap into retirement accounts. From 58 to 62, where we have the option of finally starting Social Security. And from 58 to 65, where we need to cover that healthcare gap until Medicare kicks in. So now we're starting to build a real roadmap unique to Greg and Jill, where we've identified very specific periods in time that will call for specific strategies. And finally, the fog is starting to clear. But we still need to go far beyond the back of the napkin math to get Greg and Jill to their ultimate goal of retiring early and to a place where they have the specific information they need to make better informed decisions about their retirement plans. Now we start working our software for them. Technology can be amazing, but the problem with retirement planning software especially, like most software, is it is only as good as the information you give it. Recently, I was asked to comment on an article in MarketWatch about using ChatGPT for financial planning, and I said the same thing. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're enjoying this video so far, please hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more just like it. Our napkin math made their situation look pretty good. But when we take our first look at the software, it's easy to see why one advisor or calculator would have had far different recommendations than the other. Problem was, neither was seeing the complete picture. At first glance, our Monte Carlo simulation, which is a software that projects thousands of hypothetical outcomes and averages down the potential results, tells us that they only have a 26% chance of success, which is probably leaning towards the folks that maybe said to them, hey, what this looks like on your lifetime portfolio is that they will likely run out of money in their late 70s or early 80s. Now, it's important to understand that we don't need to get this 100%. To drive complete confidence in our plan, we want to get this to about 80%, and I'll show you why. We're starting here with the figures from our napkin math, where we now said we need more like $135,000 because of taxes and insurance. But the software is already going to factor for pre-tax withdrawals for us, so we don't need to increase our actual expenses that way. Also, private healthcare isn't going to be forever. Like we said, it's only going to last until 65, so we can itemize that in a separate line item. So let's pull the expenses back down to 120. Let's add healthcare for $12,000 per year only until age 65. Now, when we flip to our Monte Carlo situation, we're up to 41%. Our lifetime portfolio, seeing that, and now our money is more likely to last until our mid-80s. So we are moving in the right direction. Now let's get into the real strategy. Right now, the system doesn't have a clear direction on how to take withdrawals. And in reality, to give Greg and Jill a higher chance of success, we're going to be very particular about which accounts we tap into and in what order. So we're going to implement a customized withdrawal strategy based on risk and tax efficiency. And because we're being particular and planning ahead, this allows us to be more aggressive in other accounts that we know we aren't going to be touching anytime soon. We call this bucketing. Different accounts, different investments for different purposes. Once we turn on these levers, as you can see here with the liquidation strategy in these two accounts, now our Monte Carlo is showing a 60% chance of success. And our lifetime portfolio is really starting to look a lot different. But as different as it looks, it's still a very flat picture. As you can see here, it's much different than where we were, but we're still starting and ending with a similar amount of money, which means we're still likely subject to certain types of risks like a market downturn or unexpected healthcare events. So we want to keep driving this number up. Next, let's talk about spending. We know from experience that in retirement, you don't spend the same amount each year. It will vary to some degree, and when we are trying to stretch the limits of our plan, we implement what's called spending guardrails. Where after educating Greg and Jill on the ebbs and flows of the market, we help them understand that one way to build flexibility into their plan is recognizing that in the year following a great year in the market, they may be able to spend a little more. But in a year following a bad year in the market, we may need to cut back just a little. This is contradictory to traditional retirement planning that says just take 4% per year every year. But we know that that isn't necessary and will likely lead to some serious underspending and significant delays to your biggest, most important goals. So understanding and planning for this builds a lot more flexibility into your plan using these guardrails. To this same end, the other thing we need to recognize is that as we get older, we're going to spend less than we did in the early years of retirement. So let's say we aren't traveling as much and we aren't doing as many activities. So instead of $120,000 a year at a certain age, let's say 85, we start spending more like $100,000 a year. So $20,000 a year less in travel and other activities. Now our Monte Carlo is up to 66%, meaning the range of outcomes is starting to look a lot different. It looks like we should be good to go. We now have a 66% chance as defined as not running out of money, but we also could end up with a lot more. And as we get more and more specific with our planning and that percentage continues to go up, you can tell right there in the meeting that Greg and Jill are starting to breathe a sigh of relief and their confidence is rising. Next up, Greg is wondering about Social Security. Originally, Greg planned to wait until 67, but since we have it plugged in, we can just play with the numbers right here in front of it. And we can see here, at its core, whether we take Social Security in their situation at 67 or we take it early at 62, it doesn't make a big difference on the long-term projections. And this is not to say that Social Security planning is not important, but for some people, it makes a much bigger difference than others. What else can we do to get their plan closer to 80%? What we can do is start to assess different scenarios. Let's say if they were to spend just $5,000 a year less, taking their 120 down to 115. That move alone moves their Monte Carlo from 66 to 70%. If they were to go down to 105, spending $15,000 a year less, now they're up over 80. As another example, what if we considered Greg working just one more year, which you might say, no, he wants to retire now, and I get that. But what if we said just work one more year, and in that year, we didn't save it all. We didn't contribute into 401ks. We didn't stress about saving throughout the year into other accounts. We already have what we believe we need. But what sort of a difference could that one single year of not spending and just growing their money through market returns make? When we look at the impact of this, we can see that this is another option that drives the percentage of success up to 79%, almost 80%. And finally, we want to target this 80% plus range because we want to get to a place where our plan could withstand potentially extended poor returns for the stock market. We're assuming about 7% per year, but you can see the impact of averaging just 1% per year less over a lifetime of investing. It could be really detrimental to a long-term plan. This is just one reason why it is so critical to get your assets properly aligned to ensure the growth you need to be successful. This shows us really a worst-case scenario that isn't likely, but it's a great way to stress test your plan. At the same time, we can also take a quick look at the impact of doing just 1% per year better than we expected. And it's like, whoa, holy cow, we're way up to the good, and we just hit 100%. All of this is about helping Greg and Jill explore the various decisions that all retirees face. And now that Greg and Jill have been walked through their plan and each and every potential factor that needs to be considered and how each one could impact their unique situation, they have a lot more confidence in exactly what they need to do. They know exactly which choices they have and the impacts of things like retiring now or working just one more year. Can they retire now at 58? Yes, they absolutely can. Are there going to be give and takes to making that decision? Yes, there is. But now they can properly weigh the pros and cons of those choices, and with the help of a person guiding them along the way, they can confidently make the decisions that are best for them. Thanks so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you're interested to see how we might be able to work together, there's a link in the description below where you can book a free consultation. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.